έχω μια μεγάλη ζωή, ενώ στα χρόνια. Λοιπόν, αλλά σκέφτηκα γιατί αύριο είναι η μέρα της γυναίκας και σκέφτηκα να διαβάσω ένα ποίημα. I'll switch on to English. I will read a poem for the Women's Day just to honor women throughout history and women of today. So this is a poem called Woman. It's not in the book. And I'm reading it in English. Indelible remnants, indelible echoes verify that my mother's mother multiplied by her mother's mother, 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 in the dawn of life was a free woman. She was a warrior, a charioteer, did somersaults on the back of the bull. She waved baskets, made earthenwares, sowed seeds, tamed wild animals, created the garden, the cradle of civilization. Freedom reigned in her domain, and life was like mother's love. Then she was enslaved by man. Her very lover became her master. He usurped her spiritual duties, wore even her robes to be the priest. He deleted her name too. So she was reduced to be just a mother and a pawn in love. Neither for good nor for bad mention her, said Pericles the Great. Yet her spirit survived in women like Atalante, the vilified Clytemnestra, and Medea. Mary, mother of the Messiah, slandered as virgin. The murdered Hypatia, the gifted Sappho, Artemisia, Mary Wollstonecraft, Madame Curie, Rosa Luxemburg. And I'm going to read another small poem about women called To Autumn. Women in the autumn season, faces aged by drudgery, icons of fortitude, bodies, sanctuaries of life, bulged and marked. Women in the autumn season, amber-colored leaves, discarded in a society obsessed by the image of its adolescence. That's for the women, for Women's Day. And I would like to read another one for the Aboriginal people, for an Aboriginal woman, since this land where here was once belonged to them. This poem is titled Rosie, and I met Rosie in one of my travels in Alice Spring, and I was so overwhelmed by that encounter. I had to write this poem, so I'll share it with you. Rosie. In the mall, next to an Aboriginal art gallery, he stretched out his hand. How do you do? My name is Garth. And holding mine as if it were a lifeline, he said, could you help Rosie to get home? Rosie is sick. $1 or $2 will do. She held onto him mutely, heron-legged, alcohol-marred. Oh, Rosie, where is your home? Where have you been? I expected you to collect the entry fee to Uluru Katajuta, but the hand that took the money was white. Fleeting tourists replenished themselves at your ancestral Edens. Dreamtime stories and your handprints are fading on rock galleries. White dealers trade your art. Oh, Rosie, if my people had been terrorized and slaughtered, if my parents were put in chains, if my children were stolen, if I had lost a starlit home, if my gaze had become bereft of sacred sights, I too would have taken to drink. Here, with my paltry arms, I make a wish. May you become like Quinilla, the Python woman. Empower yourself through the ritual of the dance and rise to slash the rapacious Neoliru men. Thank you. That's beautiful.
A very powerful poem, wasn't it? Very, very significant, as we were saying.
Yes.
Yota, when did you start writing?
It's very difficult because I'm a first generation migrant. So arriving here in 1959, it was a hard life because one had to earn a living. I was old enough to get married, but because I'm very curious by nature, I just wanted to explore the world. So I went as a woman of that time. I went in a very unorthodox way. I went to night school. I worked in a factory and I went to night school. And that wasn't easy. It was difficult working long hours and trying to study, but there was a big resistance from my people. Going out at night school, where were you? You know, they were all suspicious. I wasn't at the school, I was somewhere else. So it was difficult to, so it was, I had to be very firm that was what I wanted to do. And I did, and I disappointed a lot of people along the way, and, you know, had lots of fights, and, and I did things that were not, looking back, I wouldn't have done, you know, if I had the wisdom that I have now. But also was very much at the time, because I grew up in the Second World War and experienced the Civil War and experienced those dreadful years of the 50s, this grace of being deadlocked and everyone was trying to escape. And I was very much attracted to the ideology of the left, mainly because my people were persecuted as being, because when you have a civil war, there is no gray area. You are on that side or on that side. And my family was my father was not on any side. He was a very hard-working man, a family man. He was too busy to be anywhere. But he, in the small village, because he was hard-working, he was very successful, and people didn't like that. You know, there was a lot of envy, you know. So he was caught up in the politics, and suddenly he was taken, and my mother went to have a trial to get him out of prison, because there was work to be done. You know, the fields had to be plowed and so on. And when the trial came, he was condemned to death. But they had stopped, it was the end of the Civil War, they stopped executing people, and so they converted the sentence to life imprisonment, and he was sent to the islands. So there it was for 4 years. He was away from home. And anyway, coming here, I got very much involved in the left. I went to the marches in the early 60s. We had the marches for the moratorium, we had the Vietnam War and so on. I met some wonderful people there. I will never, the women's group, they were so friendly, and I was sort of wanted to learn. It was a teacher, Lucy Woodcock, who had retired, and said, come and have lessons with me. She gave me free lessons. So anyway, I struggled on, and in 67, I did my living certificate. In 66, 67, I go to Sydney Uni. And I did an arts degree in part-time. At the same time, I got in the public service. I did the exam, and, I was progressing in a sort of way with my heavy accent. And anyway, at the same time, I got married to this Australian who was reading revolutionary poems and he was going to change the world. This was, the revolution was just around the corner. Things were going to change, completely illusions, that I was living at the time. So I was very active. I remember on that encounter with my husband, I wrote a little poem, in English, mind you, which I have it still, and it's a good one.
Do you remember it offhand?
No, I don't. I should have brought. But that's the first poem but there was no time for writing. There was no time. Writing needs time to reflect, and I was running very short of time all the time because I had to work, I had to study, and along came my daughter Sophia, who's here in 71. So that was, it was tough going. So I don't know, some of the poems that I wrote, they seemed to come out while I was doing other things. There was I would have some encounters or something that will move me, will touch me, and I feel compelled to write. And I remember in 77, actually I read that poem, it's here. Of course, I went to teach in 74, and I asked to teach, to go as a English second language teacher. I did major in English at Sydney Uni and classical Greek, which I don't remember much nowadays. So, and then going into teaching and going to that area where the migrant kids were learning English, that was, the conditions were appalling. There was, I was teaching at the staircase, and the system they had, it was very bad, and the kids felt discriminated. They had a withdrawal system where you took the kids out of the class to come and do English, and the kids resented that because they were the wrong kids. They were stigmatized. They had to go to the English class. And I had a boy, beautiful Yugoslav boy, Ivan, and he was very angry with me, and I sat him down. I said, Ivan, I only want to help you. And he was sort of stumbling, he had a language impairment, and he was telling me that he had no problem with English whatsoever. It was a language impairment he had. And I said, look, I'll help you, go and see someone. And I did take him to a specialist to look at his problem, and he had no problem. He had no problem, he had no physical impairment. It was a sort of a cover-up for his inability to speak English. Anyway, what happened then, I got involved with another group of teachers. I should have asked them to come here tonight. Bronwyn Dawson is still a good friend. And we formed a group, and we worked through the Teachers Federation. We formed a group of interest in the Teachers Federation, and we were asking the Teachers Federation to do something about those conditions and the whole area. They were very insensitive at first. And in 1977, we were trying to put the issue to the conference for discussion. and they didn't accept it. But they said there's another way to get this up. You can put it to the conference, leaflet the conference, the people, and they might vote it in. So me and Bronwyn sat up all night, got this leaflet done, because you didn't have the computers then, you had the typewriter and so on. Anyway, we've done it, and we leaflet the conference, and they did vote it in. And then there I was, talking to these people, this Magyar woman, talking about the conditions, the injustices, and all that. And out of that weekend, I was exhausted. I was completely exhausted. And a friend of mine, Antonia, one of the teachers, she said, come to my place, where was it? Palm Beach. I took Sophia, and we went for the weekend. And this is the poem, The Sea. Out of that experience, where is it? Here it is. It's a very small poem. Anyway, soft waves massage my body, nerves uncoil, and life inside me surges again. I walk in a trance along the shore, wearing the sea's blue and white lace. My feelings ripple with joy. My blood swells like the waves. I rejoice away from the concrete jungle where creatures crawl for success and fame. This was the conference I will never forget in 77, and that I wrote it in English, as it is. At the same time, I wrote some other poems, much longer poems, which they've been a success.
You wrote one for your mother, I think, at one stage.
No, that was later. I
was
wrote
later?
one called The Migratory Birds about my students in Leichhardt, and I wrote another one to the adopted mother, to the Australian. I think that probably is in the book. But there was no time for writing. That's it. I got involved. Yeah, I was teaching all this, and then Greek came in. It was introduced in 74. Modern Greek came to school. And I had a very good principal. He would say, we have so many Greek kids here. You should teach Greek. And I was like, what he's talking about? I was into here in English. I had no training in Greek. I spoke Greek. I had done 3 years of classical Greek, but beyond that, I didn't feel I was trained to do that job. Mind you, a year later, there I was teaching Greek. I went back to uni and did 2 years of Greek as a non-degree course. And
you worked at the in the modern Greek department at one stage.
No. I studied. I did it as a
Okay.
course for 2 years because I needed to learn to teach. I didn't feel adequate. Anyway, and I kept up my Teachers Federation activities, and I went to the meetings. And I remember being at the inner city Teachers Federation meeting, and a guy, they had then the Disadvantaged School Commission. A guy came in and he was saying, we have money, you have to put in submissions for the disadvantaged schools, and you can get funded. I was scratching my hand, and I put my hand up, I said, yes, would you fund a project for a cluster of schools, for a community language? And he said, cluster of schools? Community language? Yes, sounds interesting. Cluster of schools working together, I heard at the time. And put in a submission, the great teachers who were up all night again, we put in a submission and we got funded. And then they were saying, they were all looking at me, who was going to do it? I said, I can't do it, I have a year 12. How could I do a book, Anyway, somebody else got it. And after my year 12 went, the person who got it didn't come up with much, nothing to show. And then I took it up, but I was going to go to Greece, and I only had 3 months. And I was so naive that I thought in 3 months you can do a textbook, you know. But luckily, because I had read, I love reading, and I had read, I collected a lot of sort of historical materials, which are in this book, and put a few questions at the bottom. And I used to give it to the schools. Mind you, at that time, we had Greek students who were very good, who had a big intake from Cyprus, who came here, the very, very good Greek. Anyway, so I was doing that, and I was very happy because I was putting to the students the things I loved, you know, that I had read and meant a lot to me. And after this, and I was consulting with him, he said, Yota, τούτα εδώ τα πράγματα είναι καλά και θα χαθούν έτσι που τα δίνεις. He said, they're good pieces, they're going to be lost. You should put in a book. In a book? How can you do a book? Anyway, putting in another submission. And out of that came this book, which it's got some lovely historical pieces, not much, a lot of, you know. Anyway, but I was off to Greece, and I worked day and night on that, day and night. I worked so hard. I had gone down to 45 kilos. I couldn't believe it, you know. Anyway, we went off to Greece, and this was when multiculturalism was coming in, and I was saying to the other teachers, put in a submission, you're going to be fine. So I went to Greece with Sophia, and we stayed there for 15 months, and I came back, and I went back to see the teachers, and there's another story there. Anyway, they said, would you like to put your name in for a submission? And they hadn't done anything. Anyway, did another submission, and out of that came those books, which are very good books. There are 3 of them. There were going to be 4. The 4th one never made. There's a lot of lovely, we worked very hard with the other teachers. We had a lot of workshops, but I had the main burden. And Ioana did the illustrations, which are very beautiful. Yes, so there I was doing textbooks of writing. You know, who would think about writing? Creative writing was not there. At the same time, I was working on secondment full-time on this. And then multiculturalism was fading away, programs were cut. You know, I had to go back to classroom. At the same time, I was so involved with modern Greek. Originally, I was a mark at the HSC, then I became an SAE, and then there I was. They said the supervisor had gone. Said, we need a supervisor. I was supervisor of modern Greek marking. Anyway, because I didn't have much of a career submission, I wanted to get back somewhere to write. Anyway, I was so involved in modern Greek. I also was giving the methodology course at Sydney Uni, train the teachers. And it's another world, so there was no writing. But when the program came to an end, I was appointed to, no, I was not given there's more to this story. We had a big campaign to get Greek to the schools where Greek students were. There was a big resistance from the French and the Germans. They saw as a threat. The teacher at Laika, the French teacher, will say to the kids, you know Greek, you know English, you can do a 3rd language, you can do French or German. They didn't know either Greek or English. They were in a wasteland. They were really in a wasteland. So there was a huge fight, and we did petitions, you know, we collected signatures from parents and went to the schools, and we got the subject into quite a few schools like that. And one of them was Beverly Hills High. I remember presenting the petition to the principal, and the principal telling me, would there so being Greek teachers be able to teach other subjects? I said, why should they? They're trained here, you know. There could be history or English teachers, you know. So they were so prejudiced. The point I made about Beverly Hills, in, I think it was 87, they didn't give me a job to teach Greek, although I was in Greek, so immersed. They were sending me somewhere to teach ESL, Ashcroft, I think. I was furious. I would have resigned, but I couldn't. I had a mortgage to pay. So someone told me at Beverly Hills they need point 0.4 Greek and 0.6 English, something like that. And I had major in English at Sydney Uni, and my main method was teaching English. So I went there, saw the principal, and got a job at Beverly Hills Girls High School, and I was there for 10 years. And that was a good thing because I read a lot of English literature because I was teaching a lot of children's literature, and it was fantastic. I loved it, and I was there till I retired. And while I was there, I was teaching Women of the Sun. It had come out, and the kids were so moved. Some of the girls there were so prejudiced, and when they saw the film, they were so touched by it. And then I made a commitment. I'm going to translate this book into Greek. So that was a big story. Anyway, translating the book into Greek, I had no experience anyway, but that's how my life is. I'm going to do that, and I managed to do things. So I went to Greece in '96, and I found a publisher. I gave them a couple of passages from. They said, yes, we'll do it. So I translated the book. I was so happy, and they did it till they progressed till. Anyway, they had a problem with the business, and they dropped it. So that's another story. But the book, I've got it here. The University Studio Press in Thessalonica. And it's a good book, but it gave me a very, very hard time. I'll tell you that.
Right. And the Greek title's the same, is it?
Γυναίκες του ήλιου. Γυναίκες του ήλιου. It's a beautiful book. It's very good.
We're going to try to bring it out.
Okay. So what else? I was writing a play. What's happened? Back in '79, I think it was, we had the Greek scandal, the Greek security scandal. At the time, we had a magazine coming out called Elefterias in the Uni, and I was working on that. And I got the idea to do some interviews, the unknown migrant. So I was interviewing these people. And there's one person here did her interview. I was very inspired by Anna. Anyway, then this security scandal broke out, and then I thought I need to find those people. Who were they that did so terrible things? Anyway, I interviewed two, and a woman, she was disturbed by the whole experience, and she was sick. And I felt again touched and moved. So I sat down and wrote a play. The whole issue. It wasn't much of a play anyway, but I had to do that just to. It is a good play nowadays because I reworked after I retired. I worked, and it's a bilingual play. I have worked.
Has it ever been put on?
Oh no.
Oh, would you like it to be put on?
Oh yes, but who would?
Oh well, we've got some interested people who might be interested in putting it on.
Don't worry. But it doesn't matter. At one stage, I would have liked it to be on, and I thought it should be because it's the history. You know, it's not. So that, I did that. Then we put this book together. I've written some more poems, and then I went to Greece. And there's another thing came to my life that took my time. I got a phone call, I think it was 2001 or something, from Melbourne, a woman I knew. She said, would you like to go? I would like you to go to a conference in Thessalonica with Sae. She was presenting the culture. She was, and I said, no, I'm not going. Then I said, I'll think about it. Then I was talking to a friend. I said, are you stupid? They're going to pay your fare. And you're not going? I said, I don't want to get involved. No, I don't want to go and get involved. So you don't have to. Nobody will force you. Anyway, so off I went to Thessalonica. And the woman who would have come, who was the, what they call them, the cultural person, for some reason never arrived. So they had to have elections to elect another person in her position. And the woman looked at me. I said, no, I'm not doing it. And then Vaso Calamara, if you ever know Vaso.
Another writer, Greek
another
historian.
writer in Perth. She said, Yota, you've got to do this for all of us, blah, 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 blah. And out of the blue, I got the position. And then I was so naive to think that it was an important position. And I could do things. Yes, why not? You know, I mean, that's how it seemed. I didn't realize years later. Anyway, I come back with lots of ideas. There are lots of things to be done, mind you, here in the Greek community. And one good thing out of that was τα πολιτιστικά σεμινάρια, the culture seminars. When I retired, I went to some of the lessons they had. You know, the Australians are very active and creative people. They have a third age university. So I went with a friend to some of the sessions. So when Saed came up, I thought, that's what we need in the Greek community. We need something equivalent to that. And I started those, and they were very successful. They were very well attended. We had people from universities came and talked. And also I wanted to send up something that we have the Australian Council for the Arts. I thought, why can't we have a Hellenic Arts Council in the Greek community that can fund it by the rich people and can, you know,
Very ambitious.
can sponsor the arts in the Greek community. Young people can give out scholarships. You know, off I was in full swing. We've got even a constitution for that.
Oh.
It's all in paper. It's all ready to go. It never happened. But what happened out of the Politistica Seminaria is the Open University.
Oh, right.
They have,
It's still going now.
it's still going. That's where it started. It started with me. They hadn't thought about it.
I work there.
They hadn't thought about it, they would have done it. But anyway, so I wasted 3 years there. Then I finished with the translation, and I wanted to do something about the place where I come from and about my grandmother, whom I never met. I was one when she died. She was a midwife and left a name in the whole area. And I wanted to do something about the village. I wanted to do something about my people, and that's important to me. People who, I don't know any of you who have grown up in Greece. In Greece we have this divide. It's everywhere. You have the class divisions, and it's everywhere. But in Greece we have much more, you see. In Greece, we have this country-city divide, you know, and we have a language divide. You know, the high people, they have the katharevusa, and the people spoke the language that people speak. So that language divide was very strong because it spilled over into culture and everything. So out of that, the country people were looked down by, and they felt they had an inferiority complex. I'll tell you what, in 59, when I was coming here, there were thousands of people, thousands of young, so I think over 1,000 on that ship, young women who were coming to Australia. And if you ask them where do they come from Greece, they will say from Athens. You know, they were all country people. They were ashamed to say, you know, you were the lowest of things. So, and it's still going on. They still have a language problem. And other nations had language problems. They had the Germans, they had the people's language, the high language, but they unified it. So the French, they unified that. So, and that becomes part of the nation's identity. With the Greeks, it's still going on.
Didn't it get a bit better after the purist language was taken out?
Yeah, it is better, but it's a big controversy still. And I checked it the other. I will come to it in a minute. I checked it the other day why they have an issue with the textbook for the fifth form primary school. And what is the issue? And I checked on the net. What was the issue? It's the alphabet, which has how many letters?
24.
Well,
The
in that
Greek
book,
alphabet is 24.
they have. They don't have 25. They're 5 letters less. In an exercise they give the whole alphabet minus a few vowels and 2 consonants. And there's a huge argument it's going on in Greece at the moment. So that divide is still going on. There was another, anyway, all those issues. I love the place where I come from. Although I grew up in the war, there was a beautiful, idyllic rural life. People were poor, but were self-sufficient. They grew everything. We had beautiful vineyards, beautiful gardens, beautiful fruits. You know, there were the animals that I loved so much. There was a nice, clean environment, no pollution. Sure, people didn't wear shoes, and that's could be a problem. But then I was reading somewhere that people who go barefoot, and that's how human race went for barefoot for thousands of years, they also absorb all the minerals from the earth, and it's very healthy for you, you know. But that was not only a symbol of poverty, it was also a symbol of being Xipolitos, you know. Anyway, I wanted to write. I've written in this book. There is a session, quite a few poems dealing with the village and the life then, and I wanted to explore that. So, while I visited Greece with Sae for a couple of times, I interviewed some older people in the village, and that was a very good thing because I learned a lot. And anyway, 6 years ago, I started to write something about my grandmother. And I wrote a couple of chapters. There's no written history in where I come from. During the Turkish occupations, they didn't have a register for births and deaths. And after that, they never had a register for women. They only registered the boys because they went to war. And we know that my mother was born in 1897 because there was a war, and her father didn't go because they became polytechnos. We had so many kids, so you didn't have to go. So I started writing, and I wrote a couple of chapters, and I thought, but who will help people? Greece became a nation, and once I did that, I had to write about it. It is so tragic. It's an amazing history, and I felt compelled to write. And so we have this book, Katavoles, a title which caused quite a bit of a problem because it has quite a few meanings, but I took it means a few things, but also means the roots or the regeneration. what reminds me when I was growing up, I watched my father pruning the vineyards, and when they had a good trellis, they would bear it without cutting it from the trunk for a new one, for a new vine, and that's what they call it, katavoli, katavolades. And anyway, that's the title of the book. I didn't know I was going to do this work. I'm still surprised, you know. I just couldn't believe it. I got into this, and I got into this through the reading because I felt. Anyway, it wasn't the other. It was. I went so far back. I set it in my village. That's the Idonohori, because we had a lot of Idonia, a lot of 90 girls in that village. I set it there. They are my people, and they are part of the revolution. And my people, where I come from, they love the book because of that. But I went back to history, and I was very careful. I read a lot. I read the memoirs. It's a very good source, and I was very lucky. I had some good books. So what I had to do with writing this book, you deal with research. You have the research, you have your facts, then you have to select what history is huge, it's a labyrinth out there. You have to select, and then you have the fiction. All my characters are fictional characters, and you have to stage all that. Somehow it has worked. It was an amazing journey for me. I loved it. It took me to places that I didn't know, I hadn't planned. There will be characters that come, and I say, who is this person, what they want, what the name, and then they will evolve in their own volition and become so important to the story of the book. So it's been a fantastic experience.
Will you be translating it into English at all?
You see, my problem in life, because I started so late, was time, and this is, I'm short of time.
I'm sure people will be scrambling to translate it at some point.
Well,
anyway.
I hope they do. The problem is, I nearly started translating that because I have to go back to tell you when I became a bilingual writer. I was writing either in Greek or in English, you know, other one. And then I think in the 90s, Helen Nikas, and this is the book. Yes, she said, oh, no, it wasn't this, the book, it's another book. She said, I would like you to have a poem in both languages. And at the time, I wanted to write about my mother, and it was in my mind nearly, you know, the poem there. And then I started writing down, put, you know, a section in English, a section in Greek, and look at each other. And I discovered something. Looking at this, one language was mirroring the other. And it was an amazing process of editing, something that I hadn't seen in Greek. It would come up in English. And I thought it was amazing. You know, I stumbled on it by accident. And then I became very dependent on that. After that, writing anything, I had to test it on the other language. If it was in Greek, I'll put it in English. If it was in English, I'll put it in Greek. And that's most of the poems in this book written in that way. You can do that with the poetry because they're small poems. So, but it's a wonderful thing, and it works. So
So you're saying that you think certain things in English, or you think certain things in Greek, and then you test it out in the other language? Is that
No, I write them down.
You write them down?
I write them down at the same parallel.
Yeah, at the same time.
At the same time.
At the same time.
But
you don't have one that you think in more than the other, or?
I think this is a problem. I think in images more than, it's more images than language in my mind. I don't know if that happens to other people, but it's the images in my mind. Anyway, that's how I became bilingual, and it was by accident, and it's a good skill. And So when I wrote this book, I wasn't sure. I certainly I liked it. And then I started giving to people, and people were saying it was good, but I was scared. So I thought the best way to be sure is to translate it, put it in the other language and test it. And I did a couple of pages, and I thought, no, I will never write the second one if I do this.
Yeah.
I had to drop it. Unfortunately, I wish I were younger and I had the time, I would have done exactly that. I would have written the English at the same time, and I think it would have been perfect. It's one way to write them, but I had to go on with the second book, which is at the printer. It's coming. This is the protocopy. So this is in the years of King Otto, and they were very sad years for the history of Greece. All the history of Greece is very sad.
Yeah.
But this is very significant. That period is very significant because that was the foundation of the Greek nation. They laid the foundations of the Greek nation. And all the problems we have today, I feel they come from there.
Mm-hmm.
They come from that time. That's where the Feti started, by Coletis, and it's an amazing struggle by the people. So this book is going up to 1854 with the Crimean War. The Crimean War. You have the Crimean again in the news, and I hope to finish with 19th century with the third book, which I'm working on at the moment. So.
Thank you, Yota.
Yes,
Thank you. Would anyone like to ask Yota a question? Any questions?
Well, we know so much about her life.
Yeah, she's really good at explaining it all. That was fantastic. But
How did you manage to fit in the extra Greek subjects at university in the 70s?
How did I manage to?
To do that study of the extra Greek subjects, plus work, plus everything else.
Oh yes, yes.
plus
yes,
have a child with
Yeah,
10
yeah,
ducks?
yeah,
With
yeah.
10 ducks? How many ducks did you have?
I didn't realize.
Yeah, I did a non-degree.
Yeah.
Oh well, I was lucky because we live in Glebe and Sydney Uni was next door,
yeah, very
and I was working at Leichhardt High, so that was really. But I was doing other things. Yeah, I needed to do that. I had to do for my professional, to be, yeah.
Were you doing one subject at a time or more than one?
No, only modern Greek. I had done already. I had a degree in an arts degree. Yeah, I was, I had done my teacher's training and all that. Yeah, no, that's all right. Yeah.
Yota, I don't have any